Distinguished colleagues, welcome. My name is Osman Keskin. This presentation introduced the Halal Competency Framework as a conceptual modality designed to address the growing mismatch between biotechnological complexity in food production and the professional competency architectures of culinary product professionals. The central argument of this study is that as food production becomes increasingly opaque due to biotechnological innovation, the professionals operating at the field level require more than technical skills. They need epistemic capacity to interpret certifications, reason under uncertainty, and maintain ethical integrity. The presentation is structured as follows. I will first define the research problem and its motivation within the context of biotechnological transformation. Then I will present the theoretical framework, which rests on three analytical axes. The methodology section will explain in the literature synthesis and document analysis approach. I will then present the Halal Competency Framework model in detail, followed by a discussion of its governance implications and conclude with a summary of contributions and future directions. The food production landscape has undergone a fundamental transformation. Technologies such as cultured meat, precision fermentation, and molecularly designed hybrid ingredients have relocated the origin of raw materials from physical traceability to laboratory-based processes, as documented by Stephens and colleagues in 2018. Simultaneously, Halal certification has evolved from a religious compliance mechanism to a component of global quality structures. As Yasuda argued in 2017, the critical challenge is that document-based verification can no longer fully capture the material complexity of these production processes. This leads to a central question. As uncertainty in food production increases, is it sufficient to equip field-level professionals, particularly chefs and culinary professionals, with technical skills alone? This study argues that it is not. The theoretical framework is built on three analytical axes. The first axis draws on Power's concept of audit culture from 1997, which shows that modern institutions produce trust through documentation of auditability rather than direct evaluation of performance. Halal accreditation systems follow this procedural logic. The second axis concerns biotechnological opacity and structural uncertainty. Novel food technologies create what we call epistemic opacity, meaning that even when production processes appear transparent, their verification requires specialized technical expertise that narrows the circle of those who can actually evaluate them. Tayop in 2016 characterized this tension as a structural misalignment between technical control and ethical meaning. The third axis reveals the epistemic gap in chef's competency literature. Despite significant development since 2010, competency frameworks remain focused on technical execution, certification literacy, reasoning under uncertainty, and governance events are not defined as systematic competency domains. To illustrate this gap constantly, let me compare what the existing literature defines with that what is missing. On one side, the competency literature has made important contributions. Zopiotis identified technical culinary competence as the primary success factor. Shuairem and colleagues developed the Star Chef competency model. Mahfoud and colleagues classified chef competencies into confunctional and core blocks. Magnakov and Goismsaglu analyzed competencies at managerial, technical, and operational levels. These are valuable contributions. However, on the other side, none of those models include competencies for analyzing certification regimes, comparing accreditation logos, or reasoning under condition of epistemic uncertainty. Even the sustainability-oriented literature, which positions chefs as normative leaders, does not provide a governance framework that addresses these dimensions. The study employs a three-stage research design. The first stage involves a systematic literature review covering the period from 2010 to 2024, mapping existing theoretical frameworks and identifying gaps across three standards: Halal governance and certification infrastructures, biotechnological production and novel food literature, and chef and culinary competency models. The second stage is a document analysis, specifically examining the IHAC level 4 Rev 01 standard, which is the legal basis for professional qualifications in the Turkish culinary sector. This document was evaluated from a science and technology studies perspective according to 4 themes: emphasis on technical skills, reference to decision making under uncertainty, content related to certification literacy, and ethical responsibility and governance references. The third stage involves conceptual model development based on the identified mismatch. The Halal competency framework extends existing technical competency blocks with 3 epistemic capacity domains. The first domain is certification and standards literacy. This refers to the professional's capacity to analyze the scope and limits of Halal certifications and to distinguish between different accreditation regimes. It functions as the ability to interpret the document-based nature of trust production at the field level. The second domain is reasoning under uncertainty. Under biotechnological production conditions, supply chains are no longer directly observable. Professionals must be able to suspend processes when necessary, request additional verification, and make decisions under risk. The third domain is operational integrity and ethical responsibility. This includes assessing cross-contamination risks in both religious and technical terms, engaging in ethical reasoning in ambiguous situations, and fulfilling institutional reporting responsibilities. These 3 domains are interrelated and layered, not isolated. The operational logic of the model follows a layered structure. Certification literacy forms the knowledge base. Reasoning under uncertainty generates decisions based on that knowledge base. operational integrity, institutionalizes these decisions at the practice level. This structure recognizes Halal assurance as a multi-layered governance process extending from document production to operational practice. The framework also implies a fundamental transformation in the professional role. The chef moves from being a technical practitioner to an interpretive practitioner, from a procedure follower to an actor with risk awareness, and from an operations manager to a guardian of ethical integrity. In essence, personnel are transformed from passive workers who only follow instructions into conscious and active auditors of integrity on the ground. In terms of the study's contribution to the literature, the Halal competency framework extends chef competency models with an epistemic layer encompassing certification literacy, reasoning under uncertainty, and governance awareness. It positions chefs not merely as operational actors but as epistemic actors. Regarding Halal governance implications, we must acknowledge three realities. Document-based verification doesn't cover the entire production process, technical transparency does not ensure epistemic transparency, and responsibility is distributed along the supply chain. The Halal IHAC functions as a complementary layer at the field level. From a strategic perspective, updating national standards through coordinating between policymakers and such as IHAC and IHAC according to technological realities is a strategic necessity for building sustainable trust and competitiveness in the international market. To conclude, this study identified a clear mismatch between the epistemic opacity generated by biotechnological food production and existing chef competency architectures. Certification systems produce procedural trust, while novel food technologies expose the limits of verification capacity. Although Halal governance has evolved into a global knowledge infrastructure, professional competency structures at the field of level do not fully reflect this complexity. The Halal competency framework addresses this gap by integrating certification and standards literacy, decision-making capacity under uncertainty, and ethical integrity in operational processes into formal professional competency structures. In an era of biotechnological uncertainty, trust depends not only on document production but on professional capacity capable of interpreting that documentation and intervening when necessary. For future research, we suggest empirical testing through scale development, integration into national vocational qualification standards, and cross-cultural validating across different Halal governance contexts. Thank you for your attention. I welcome any questions or comments regarding the Halal competency framework and its potential for implementation. Distinguished colleagues, welcome. My name is Osman Keskin. In this presentation,
Osman Bey'e de teşekkür ederiz. Evet, bununla ilgili de biraz önce bahsettiğim gibi helal personel yeterlilik çerçevesi belirlenmiş. Bu yeterlilik çerçevesinde dünyadaki tüm akreditasyon kuruluşları, uygunluk değerlendirme kuruluşları görevlendirecekleri personellerin bu yeterlilik çerçevesinde belgelendirilmesi, aynı zamanda süreçlerde işte hem hizmet sürecinde hem üretim sürecinde çalışacak personelin de yeterliliklerinin belirlenmiş, bu yeterliliklere göre de uygun sertifikasyonun gerçekleştirilmiş olması gerekiyor. Herhangi bir sorunuz varsa biz cevaplayalım. Yoksa katıldığınız için size hepinize teşekkür ederiz. Var mı herhangi bir soru? Yok, teşekkürler çok. Teşekkürler. Görüşürüz hocam. Çok teşekkürler. Tamam. Tamam hocam.
Kolay gelsin.
Sağ olun.